there so that I could allow you to record. Selwyn, can you help the group because you did it 3 weeks ago? How did you
I
do
did it
that?
3 weeks ago pero nakapulo ko, so I'm not sure when it comes to desktop. But I think meron talagang option to record also for us students in the Zoom
Meron na,
meeting.
guys, but I just have to give you permission.
Just
Sir,
try to click it if
recording na
you're
po.
not.
You granted the permission na po kanina.
Okay, meron na? Okay, sige. Kasi otherwise, this is sayang itong recording. Okay, so again, I've said this is the work of Wataru for Module 4.1. Let's just begin maybe with the first two reporters up until 11:30. I give you Ron, guys, to start the report.
Um, talaga na ito. Okay, sige. Good morning, everyone. So again, we are Group 2, and we are tasked with presenting Module 4.1, which is entitled The Social Structure and Moral Framework of Philippine Society. As was previously mentioned, this module deals with the work of Wataru Kosaka, which is entitled Moral Politics in the Philippines, Inequality, Democracy, and the Urban Poor. However, before we delve into the content of Module 4.1, I am tasked with giving a brief overview of what was discussed by the previous group, which is Module 3.2. So Module 3.2 talks about local politics in the Philippines. We discussed things like the patron-client relationship, clientelism, possession, and dynasticism. We also talked about reformers, which are some of the more positive institutions which advocate for new and transparent politics. We also, the previous group also talked about how different these institutions are from one another, as Sir Clyde mentioned earlier. Uh, Patron-client relationship is based on other source of political capital is land, ownership of land, as opposed to clientelism, which relied on name recall and exchange of benefits for political support. We also differentiated bossism and dynasticism in the sense that the bossism relies on, again, the three Gs, which tend to be illegal and extra-legal. Hence, they don't tend to last long and are only limited to a single generation, as opposed to dynasticism, which is spread over a period of time. We also talk about fat and thin dynasties, which are okay. We also talk about fat and thin dynasties, in which are situations of or the degree of dynasticism in our politics. Fat dynasties means that there are members of the dynasty in a national position, whilst thin dynasties are more locally entrenched. The presenters also talked about a gentle revolution, which was the structural transformation that Sir Clyde mentioned earlier, in which traditional politics is being replaced by new, fair, and transparent politics, which is mainly because of urbanization, which granted more opportunities to those who are not as who are impoverished and not as participatory in our politics. This was already discussed by Sir Clyde, but the specific article in the Constitution is that the state shall guarantee equal access to opportunities for public service and prohibit political dynasties as may be defined by law. And nga, but there is still no law passed to enforce this provision. However, with judicial legislation, the Supreme Court can issue a continuing mandamus, which can compel the government to enforce this constitutional provision. we ended the report with the conclusion that while NGOs and CSOs are the wind to the sails of democracy, these other informal institutions, aside from the reformers, of course, threaten to sink the boat of democracy in the Philippines. Now, if we were to compare and contrast Module 3.2 and 4.1, Module 3.2 again looks at local politics and those in power. Module 4.1, on the other hand, looks at the conditions of the masses and the citizens in which this power is exercised on. For those who were in the Pol Sci 101 class last year, we discussed the triangular structure of politics and society, in which there is the limited elite at the top, the middle class, and the masses at the bottom. And we had economy to the left and culture to the right. Both are equally important contexts as to how we understand our country's politics. This module delves into social stratification or social structure, which is economy, and also the morals that is passed on to the people, which is influenced by attitudes, beliefs, and values, and our political culture. Now, to sort of give a preview of what my peers will be discussing regarding Module 4.1, they will be talking about the Philippine social structure, the origins of inequality and elite rule. Has the said structure changed or not? What is hegemony and hegemonic struggles? Urbanization and its effect on political participation, neoliberalism and its relationship with the middle class, the frameworks of the dual public spheres, which are the mass sphere, the civic sphere, and the contact zone, the concepts of antagonism and agonism, and to sum it up, what really is moral politics in the Philippines now, and especially in the current Marcos era. So that would be all for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. Let's go to the next. You may also ask questions up until 11:30 to the three identified classmates.
Good morning, everyone. I was tasked to discuss the Philippine social structure and how it is best characterized. So, Kasuga stated that the Philippine social structure is characterized by profound class disparities and high poverty rate. Well, you may ask how he came up with this statement. Let us look at the pyramid on the screen, which is the Philippine social structure. And it is split into three classes. We have the elites, the middle class, and the lower class. This form of social structure can be traced back to the Spanish period. And this structure progresses from the top of the hierarchy, which holds the highest social status, to the bottom, which has the least wealth and power in the society. The said social classes are rooted in one another as the three classes run the society. So the elites or the wealthy class is in pursuit of private profit and has broad economic activities. Meanwhile, the middle class seeks job opportunities within the country or overseas. As for the lower class, also known as the wage laborers. Talking about disparities and terms of poverty, following the SWS survey, a great percentage of households considers themselves as poor. There are 50 to 60% nationwide, whereas 35 to 50% in Manila categorize themselves in the poverty line. Oftentimes, poor households have more children than the wealthier ones. The SWS survey also takes into consideration the characteristics of residences and education for categorizing social classes. in Manila, 30 to 40% for
Love,
those
sorry.
who are, I'm sorry.
Love, I have to butt in the discussion. There's no need to discuss the statistics because it's clear what are elites, middle class. Maybe we use more of the time until 11:30 to think along the lines of if people are constitutive of the elite class or middle class or lower class as an economic stratified as an economic stratification class, do they also have observed differences as to their morality? Do you have that in your report?
So,
If it's an elite, they have a different kind of morality. If it's a middle class, these are their morality, or lower class, that's also their morality.
no, sir. Wala po sa report.
So what else do you have in your portion?
Like, can relate ko lang po sa relationships, out, ang social structure, ang relationships and social structure sa income and education. Yeah,
Okay,
merong
So
disparities.
you're just basically saying that Philippine society is economically stratified along these
Yes.
three different classes. Okay. Is there anything else that you need to emphasize in your script or in the notes that you prepared for your part of the report?
Wala na po.
Okay. So kasi clear na, 'di ba? I don't want to spend more time just repeating facts that these are the elites, these are the middle class or the lower class. But maybe the one thing that you guys have to remember is that these are not discrete stratified classes. Meaning to say, if it's discrete, there are readily identifiable markers na pag umabot ka sa ganitong threshold of monthly income, you're elite already or you're considered as an elite because the purchasing power of peso, okay, and the ability to spend money from a wage always would change from time to time depending on influxes in our economy. So that's one factor that makes it a non-discrete variable. That's one thing to remember. And the second, maybe just to add on the segment of social structure in the Philippines assigned to Lobelia is to take note that within these stratified economic classes, there is further stratification involved. So you could have upper middle class, lower middle class, middle class. So be very careful about that one. You also have lower class and you also have classifications of individuals living before the poverty line. So it's something that you have to reckon with once you think of the triangular structure of society that Lobelia have introduced. Last one thing. Just to give you a preview, because you will be reading the reading material in preparation of your deadline for Monday, and also to prepare for the continuation of this report in the recorded version, and expect a quiz again by Thursday. Um, Wataru, Wataru makes an important distinction that elites think differently than the lower class. Yun yung pinakamalupit na contribution niya in the study of Philippine politics. Meaning, pag mayaman ka, iba ang moralidad mo. Pag mahirap ka, iba din ang moralidad mo. That's the civic sphere and the mass sphere that is stated in your reading materials. And he said that more often than not, the elites think differently in terms of who to vote and what policies to support because of their morality. And the poor, excuse the language, also have a different perspective in terms of their morality, who is the person that they want to vote, and the choices that they support in terms of public policy. But your assignment is to read further because what if they now interact? Yung mayaman na iba ang pananaw sa morality, and then yung mahirap, iba din yung pananaw niya sa morality. What if they interact in the contact sphere? What would be the resulting politics that is observed in Philippine society? Okay? So that's actually the things that you have to take into consideration in preparation of your writing assignments. Guys, it's already 11:31. I'm really sorry. I have to cut off as much as I wanted to just discuss and continue discussing with you and engaging you to learn politics more. Sorry. We have to end now formally because some of you have classes, but also, uubo lang ako isa pa. I also have to allow group two to just continue their discussions. I will leave the meeting, but I will not end the meeting, okay? And my request is group two, make sure that this is continuously recorded so that it could be shared later on. And if you guys have nothing to do or just planning to have lunch later so that you save time, maybe you could just listen to the report of group two and turn off your camera as they continue so that all you have to do is just to do your writing assignment and have a good grade in the quiz next meeting. Okay? If you have questions, guys, so not to interrupt the continuation of the report of group two, just leave it in the chat box, especially for Ellie who's raising his hand now. I will reply just before leaving the meeting from there, okay? Mag-continue pa po ba ng recitation? Yes, feel free to continue the recitation. I will listen to the recording and I will actually be grading the students assigned today on deck based on their responses. Huwag niyo lang silang pagalitan even if you're the teacher in that recorded version of the lecture, okay? Sige. So I'll be staying for 2 more minutes just to respond to some queries and then I will not say goodbye anymore. You will just see me leave the meeting and we will just have this continued, okay? So wherever you are, I hope that you guys take shelter and comfort from the extreme heat today. I hope that I think the conditions will not improve, but we'll continuously using asynchronous mode of learning up until our face-to-face integration for modules 4 and modules 5. Okay, so thank you group 2 for making an effort, and wherever you will be after this class, enjoy the rest of your day. Okay, this is the formal end of today's meeting. Class dismissed.
Thank you, sir.
Group 2, you may just continue now.
How did historical process? Okay. Yeah. Sige. How did historical processes in the Philippines contribute to inequalities and elite dominance? First, it started in the Spanish colonial era. The inequality and elite dominance of our country originated in the 16th century through the system of large land holdings because the resources of the country was especially Dogen Ford sa una sa mga Spaniards ang aton nga resources. But in 1834, na growth of capitalism and world trade, ang Spain, ginopen nilang ports for other countries. And in this case,
Sorry, Ruben, I think you have to turn off the second device.
and mestizos, the mga half Chinese, half Spanish for businesses and Spanish religious orders to
Ruben, sorry, I have to put you on mute. I think you have to mute the second device so it does not echo. There's a feedback in the audio. Thank you. So sorry.
okay na. Okay na. Okay na ka,
Yes, that's good.
So to continue where I left off, Spanish religious orders to gain wealth by seizing land from the indigenous people and then building plantations. Then in 1898, the advent of the Spanish colonial period, the wealthy Chinese mestizos that gained their wealth from building these plantations purchased land from
fleeing or expelled Spanish religious orders, and then formed the what we now know as the traditional elite class. Now, in the American colonial period, the Americans introduced the democratic institutions, and in which case it opened up political offices for local elites and to acquire and solidify their political power. But it was made to control control the elites, but it consequently solidified their power, their political power. Now, the Americans concentrated on the central governments and resources and businesses, which produce fierce competition amongst elected or elites for the share of these powers and resources. And this resulted in the creation of strong societies and weak states. The strong societies and weak states is those the elected officials or elites are have massive influences in their home region, and but the state has no has not enough sufficient control over over different localities, and the elites maintain their dominance through the use of the authority gained from the government. They use that authority for rent or control over businesses to amass more wealth and to preserve and maintain their power and influence as elites as of today. Elites that constructed a system that protected their common interests as a class of people. Consequently, social cleavage or the division of classes or of social classes became an important factor in politics, discrimination. And one example of the of inequalities and dominance in these periods is the feudalism in Spanish era. Okay, that's all.
Who is next after Ruben?
So next is, has the social structure in the contemporary Philippines transformed? So yes, the social structure in the contemporary Philippines has significantly transformed, particularly in light of the evolving role of the urban middle class, the democratization movement initiatives that the voluntary association has made, and the establishment of the local government code of 1991. So here we have two case studies that support the social structure transformation in the Philippines. We have Takagi Yusuke. In his case study entitled Policymaking After the Revolution, the Phases of Local Transformation of the Philippines, he emphasizes how the local government code of 1991 facilitated the empowerment of marginalized communities through granting them more autonomy in politics. So because there is a localization, the code promotes localization, it decentralizes the power, which enables the marginalized or poor to have the liberation in participating more in politics, resulting in their empowerment and participation. So also the code systematized the participation of voluntary association in local politics, which means that this voluntary association involved organizing and formalizing themselves within the framework of local government structure to enhance their effectiveness, their accountability, and their integration into the political decision-making process at the local level. So next, we have the case study of Masataka Kimura, entitled The Emergence of the Middle Class and Political Change in the Philippines. So in his study, he illustrates how the middle class played a significant role in a political change through their initiatives such as spearheading the spearheading such mobilizations. They created course-oriented groups. They collaborate with other organizations. They form coalitions with other grassroots advocates, which highly focuses on these various social issues, which will lead to social action. So yeah, so yun nga, since they form large voluntary groups called cause-oriented groups, they joined forces with other organizations, which justifies Kasuka's statement in the readings, which the middle class formed an NGO which engaged in social actions on such social issues such poverty, fair elections, and women. So because this urban middle class spearheaded and participated in a lot of movements, they acquired confidence and became social reformers who engage in activities that will result in social action. So their involvement and their mobilization initiatives really help them to organize themselves, participate largely in grassroots lobbying, helping other communities or marginalized sector to break away with the domination of the elite. So we have here, we have a lot of factors, but these are the main ones. So we have the urbanization. So of course, there's an increase of migration from rural areas to urban areas because of the opportunities, the economic opportunities, which can lead to the change of their lifestyle in their and community structure. So when I mentioned that urbanization offers opportunities for economic advancement and purposes, I meant that from moving from rural areas to urban areas, it can provide individuals with various opportunities to improve their economic status as well as their social standing. So we also have the shift in political party system. So from the two-party system, the nationalist and the liberal during the Marcos regime, to the multi-party system, which is the emergence of non-traditional politicians, may mga other various political representations na yung mga marginalized communities, the poor. So this enabled the shift in political ideologies and may nagkaroon ng mga bagong perspektibo. It introduces a new leadership style that altered the resource distribution and the group dynamics within the political system. So next is the constant shifting of the slum population. So of course, there's a difficulty in cultivating a stable relationship between the politicians and the poor since yun nga may emergence na ng other social actors such as NGOs and leftists. So nagkaroon ng instability yung relationship ng politicians with the marginalized. So this shifting of the population, since hindi na nila makater lahat, yung ibang marginalized is nagtatransfer na ng allegiance kung saan mas nabibigay yung pangangailangan nila for their survival. This dynamic nature ng pag-change ng population nila redefine social structures through the influencing social cohesiveness and the accessibility of resources and as well as the political representation. So next is the urban poor enjoy a wider range of options. Yun nga, yung presence ng NGOs and lefties, since the urban poor now have a wide array of options, they are able to choose on their own free will. So they're kind of empowered na. So with this, they become empowered and they shake the traditional power dynamics, and this empowerment fosters social mobilizations, especially among the marginalized communities. Also, we have these media imagery. So this is one of the significant and main factor because the spread of television, the high emergence of technology and this had an enormous effect on cultural standards, principles, and current aspirations of the Filipino people. So it influences the views of the people regarding with wealth, context, success, and societal roles. So, and of course, on who to vote for sa election. So thereby enabling the evolving of social structures. Also, we have the social change. So since it loosened the grip of clientelism, this enabled the poor to participate more freely, yun nga autonomously in politics, kasi may empowerment na ang civil society. So may malaki na yung ambag nung civil society sa social change. So next is the volunteer association. So through the diverse membership and yung inclusive activities ng volunteer associations, they contribute really big sa pag-build ng more equitable and resilient society, from their advocacy rights, from their services to the marginalized communities. Given the fact that they are non-profit in nature, they still have the networks and the networks and the resources na they can help the marginalized, they can promote education, they can embody positive change, specifically at the grassroots level, and they drive progress and foster collective responsibility among the Filipino citizens. Of course, they operate independently and are often driven lang by their commitment to social change. So that's why they have a diverse role, including yung pag-provide nga ng social services that empowers a lot of underserved communities. So that's all po. So I would like to ask a question po sa wala.
I actually allowed the people on deck to
Okay po.
just log out because they do have classes now. So just continue with the report, please.
Sige po. So sige, next na.
Thank you, Kay.
So before I proceed to the framework, I will first define hegemony, hegemonic struggle, and lastly, the structure of the dual public sphere. So hegemony is an imposed idea or norm by a dominating group over other people. One example is the neoliberal ideology, which is a type of dominant ideology which influences the public policies of numerous governments, both in wealthy and developing nations as well as international organizations. Next is hegemonic struggle. It implies a struggle for supremacy or dominance of power in a specific field. Next is the dual public sphere, where if you see the structure below the Venn diagram, is composed of both the civic sphere and the mass sphere and the contact zone in the middle. So members of the civic sphere is accustomed to using English, since it is associated with power, signifying their dominance and control over their subordinates. While the people from the mass sphere speak in colloquial terms, but through the contact zone, they're able to exchange discourses or are still able to communicate with each other to some extent. But nobody truly fits into either sphere, and different social bonds are formed through the contact zone between people who have comparable objectives and interests or similar goals. And now I will proceed to the framework. So the framework is built through the actions of dismantling hegemonic discourses on how different social groups in the society fight against each other with various methods to change the civil society, and overall it has a prominent influence in the political process. So with the use of this framework, we can better comprehend or understand the ways in which different socioeconomic class groups advocate for social change or to promote idealized versions of the society. To further explain it in detail, I will give a relevant example, which are the Timawa, Maginoo, and Alipin. So the Maginoo will represent the elites, and these are of royalty blood, which are members related or connected to the Datus. And next are the Timawa. They represent the civic sphere. They are part of the middle class during the pre-colonial Philippine society. Then lastly are the Alipin, and they represent the mass sphere. And compared to the Timawa, the Alipin doesn't really enjoy more, doesn't have freedom or certain distinct rights. So in relation to the feudal system, other classes have little opportunity because the Maginoos are at the top of the pyramid, have all the privileges and power. The people who experience the most unfair treatment are the lower classes, and those are represented by both the Timawa as a civic sphere and the Alipin as the mass sphere. All things considered, the Timawa and the Alipin both maintained their unique rights and were still integral parts of the pre-colonial Philippine culture, but they held different positions. Peasant resistance was one of the ways they were able to voice their discontent and opposition towards the Maginos or the elites. That's all. And
Okay. So good morning, everyone. At this juncture, let me discuss to you the relationship between middle class thinking and the neoliberal policies. But before we proceed to the relationship between the two, I'll first define what middle class thinking and neoliberalism is. So, middle class thinking, according to Kosaka in the readings itself, the middle class occupations include the professionals, technologies, business managers, executives, office workers, and the university students who fill these occupations just like us. The middle class thinking believes that having a job is enough, which they view as an average life. Middle class is the most suppressed, restricted, and confined socioeconomic demographic demographic in the world. So those who desire to be a part of it are compelled to think and act in a certain way where just enough is a reward. So that is the middle class thinking. Now let us move on to the neoliberalism. Neoliberalism is a policy model that encompasses, in its definition, it encompasses politics and economics and seeks to transfer the control of economic factors from public sector to the private sector. The policies of neoliberalism supports fiscal austerity, free trade, privatization, deregulation, reduction in government spending. So this neoliberalism clings to the capitalist system, wherein one example is the UP educational system itself, because public education is introduced to us by the Americans, wherein private sector played a bigger role in providing job opportunities to the middle class, which is us, or that we belong to. And then, to further elaborate the neoliberal policies in education, which is it is the new ways in gaining money, which is nowadays being normalized. So, in the commercialized education system here in the Philippines, the basic human rights, which is education, is being deprived. Um, it is solely for profit, urged to enter private universities because of tight applications of CUs or state universities. And also, net profits of private schools are increased, just like the Silliman University and the Ateneo University, which are two types of higher public institutions here in the Philippines with um, very mahal na tuition fees. Then also, capitalists not just control economy, but also the educational system here in the Philippines and to the other nations as well. Okay. Then, the relationships between the two, the middle class thinking and the neoliberal policies, is that the idea that one would only have to be comfortable and adequately satisfied is the concept that has been sold by the educational system, as what I said earlier, the media and politicians, to convince an entire population of the people to settle instead of striving for abundance. This is also it pressures of dependency on the United States and the global neoliberal economic agenda due to being underdeveloped country. So we belong to the third world countries. So it is another reason. Then, according to Kasuka's examination of the neoliberalism, Kasuka's examination here is it takes effect in the country, especially in the view of shaping of subjects. In discussing neoliberalism itself, Kusaka directs his attention to how the subject and their moral politics are being shaped in view of their distinct class experiences, which is the middle class and the um, lower classes. So in relation to the discourse and moral politics dominant in the civic sphere, which is dominated by the middle classes, to reiterate, the public sphere of the Philippine civil society is treated as a dual public sphere, as discussed earlier, composed of the middle class or the civic sphere and an impoverished class or the mass sphere, wherein the degree of inequality between the middle class and the impoverished class is extreme. So Kasuka begins his critique in the moral politics by arguing that the dominant flavor of Philippine elite politics has been to bank on political moralizations of varying moves and forms, which contend in the public sphere by attracting support from the civic sphere itself or the other. So the moral politics here is a discursive framework. It is come to the terms how the citizens form their understanding of social problems through their notions of good and evil. So under this moral politics frame, citizens view their nation's maladies as caused by morally wrong actions done by the individuals. Just for example, public leaders or groups of people. By grasping how moral politics works, Kusapa's text, according to the reading, shows how it prevents Filipinos from attaining significant social improvements. So this is basically so problematic. Another one is the the moral discourse is that civic and inclusivity. So civic inclusivity is a basically middle class, civic minded moral discourse to unite the poor and everyone else under the banner of good citizenry. So basically, the middle class they define themselves as citizens because those and the lower class who are the masses they believe that they are um uneducated. Then Kazuha says the middle class inclusivist will become an exclusivist, realizing that the masses, after all, lacks the proper skills and morals to become true citizens. Then, middle class dominated civic sphere more often not will clash the concerns and perspectives of that impoverished section of the Philippine society in the mass sphere. So, to further elaborate, Kasuka's assessment in the moral discourses is that the middle class prioritization of the rational policy debate and the moral values in choosing candidates for elective office visibly clash with the masses' priorities of finding support and state assistance towards solving these problems in relation to the land, residents, and other necessities of life. Thus, existing voter education programs, mostly based on the middle class perspective, are seen by the rest of the masses as unappealing at best or patriotising at worst. So that's it for my part.
Okay. I'm still here actually, and I transferred to my phone. I'll try to help you guys out in the analysis, just to address the elephant in the room, so to speak. So the question that um Alice answer is, what is the relationship, right, of middle class thinking to neoliberalism? Two things you have to remember. Can we go back to the slide of Miss Hinon? The slide before this. Can you enlarge the civic sphere, contact zone, mass sphere drawing?
Yung framework.
Hindi na. Sige. Never mind. Just go back to that slide. I think it's the second slide. Remember that that sphere does not emphasize where the middle class is. Only the fact that the mass sphere is for the masses and the civic sphere is always attached to the elites. The mass sphere always to the poor segments of the population. The reason why I wanted the next reporter after this slide to discuss about the middle class is the middle class does not figure in the drawing. Okay, so that's the first thing that you have to remember. In the civic sphere, contact zone, or the mass sphere, which is called as a one framework as the dual public sphere, the identification of where the middle class is lost. While in the triangular structure that Lovelia introduced in the earlier slides, the middle class is always in the middle, right? So that's the first thing that you have to observe. Where is the middle class now in the dual public sphere? The answer should come from Aliza's discussion of what is the connection of the middle class with neoliberal policy. It might confuse you, but neoliberalism is just a policy preference, okay, between privatization or opening up your economy. What would people prefer based on their economic standing? So the answer there is that the elites usually would favor neoliberalism. Pag sinabing neoliberalism, decreasing the state's role, increasing private parties' role in the delivery of social services. So you privatize education, you privatize healthcare with the idea that if there is competition, it will drive down the prices of basic commodities. Remember that that's an elitist perspective, or people from the elite tier of the triangular structure would basically support. The opposite of that is that the masses or the people in the poor sectors of the society would not support that otherwise, because theirs is a perspective that the government must be one that redistributes wealth, and therefore the function of the government is social justice, to help the poorest of the poor and to assist those who have the least in life. So always remember, second point, that the elites are favoring the policy option of neoliberalism, and on the contrary, the masses would always go against neoliberal policies because they are the ones in need of social basic services. If you privatize social basic services, then the poor cannot anymore because they don't have the means. That's the second point. The identification of who supports what, the middle class is all lost, right? So the elephant in the room is batian nyo ko? Can
Yes,
someone okay, sorry, nawala ako ng mga 30 seconds. Tatapusin ko lang yan. So, I think I was talking about where is the middle class, because it got lost in the work of Wataru's framework. The answer to the question is that you always have to remember that the middle class is not anymore in the middle if the question is about neoliberalism, or if the question is about civic and mass sphere. So where do you put the middle class? Usually the middle class is attached to elitist thinking in support of neoliberal policies. Okay? Can we have a look again at Alisa's slide, the slide after this one? This is the reason why Alisa says the idea of the middle class is a concept that has been sold to convince individuals to settle instead of striving for abundance. That's the reason why a lot of people in the Philippines would identify themselves as middle class. And also, you have readings which say that EDSA People Power 1 was a revolution born out of middle class thinking, because it's a curious case in between elitist thinking and also poor morals. Hindi poor morals, the morals of the poor or those living in the poverty line, because they're able to feed for themselves, land a job, therefore have a decent life. Their morality is now obscured if whether they do support the morality of the elites or they commiserate with the morality of the poor. So always remember that the middle class is subsumed with the elitist thinking in your civic sphere. So usually, if the question is who is a middle class and what is the moral politics of the middle class, the moral politics of the middle class is one who is educated, but also would have a very difficult position if it now involves their interest in economics or business, because they would prioritize their business or their interest over that of social reform or social justice that supports the morality of the poor. So yun lang yung tandaan nyo. Maybe in short, to bring home the point, last sentence, middle class is subsumed with elitist thinking in the moral sphere and not anymore with the mass sphere. But again, the question still lingers. In the contact sphere, is there a distinct middle class thinking? Okay? Sige, you guys may proceed. I'll try to limit my engagements now.
So in civics, sorry. In civic sphere, notions of correct politics are articulated by In civic sphere, notion of correct politics are articulated by concepts such as policy-based debate, accountability, transparency, good government, and rule of law. It is often described as new politics. According to Randy David, new politics aims to reform political institutions and strengthens routines aiming to end mass poverty and political illiteracy for progressive democratization and modernization. The middle class tends to accept benevolent authoritarianism if it is associated with economic growth of a country. While political consciousness varies among individuals, a common thread is rejecting traditional Philippine politics and desiring modern political reform. Civic sphere tend to oppose politics characterized by corruption, cronyism, personality, and elimination of the poor through clientelism. Atrapo refers to a politician who exploits the poverty of his constituents through the selective patronage and treats public funds and facilities as his personal resources. This abuse of democracy and freedom by a corrupt elite has caused disorder and stagnation in the Philippines. After democratization, the middle class gained more respect and become primary actors. As the leaders of the movement for moral, social, and political reform, they increasingly regard themselves as morally superior to the poor, the elite, and the state. They have a high perception of themselves as taxpayers. Thus, in corrupt politics, they see their taxes going to corrupt politicians or doled out to the poor as bribes, and it frustrates them. Driven by the morality of capitalism, promoting terms like privatization and equal opportunity have become common in the civic sphere. Pinch notes the business magazine extols virtues like initiative, vision, creativity, and ethnic Chinese entrepreneur as seen as driving nation's future growth. The morality has influenced the perception of This morality has influenced the perception of the wealth creation in the market. The civic sphere, despite not adhering to neoliberalist morality, often support values supporting the poor's dignity and substance. Meanwhile, in mass sphere, the notion of correct politics that enjoys the most widespread support is politics based in fairness without regard for wealth or the poor, and on concern for the generosity towards in need. Conversely,
Members of mass sphere decry the politics that displays a callous and a disinterested attitude toward the needs of who try to make an honest living and treat the weak unjustly. The mass sphere views values freedom and equality, while addressing inequality where the wealthy receive all benefits is perceived as a problem. This viewpoint supports protecting the livelihood and dignity of the poor, reflecting the morality of the mass sphere, which values the welfare of the poor. Dignity and livelihood are important to mass sphere. This morality of mutual assistance prioritizes the survival and the livelihood of the community members in the Philippines today. The dignity of poor individual is often denied, leading to the feeling of inferiority in various aspects in life. The shame and humiliation of the poor arouse intense anger and causing resistance to ruling under its values. The morality of the mass sphere, rooted in Catholicism, emphasizes dignity and livelihood of the poor. The morality encouraged the poor to walk the path of Christ, endure suffering, and strive for self-reliance. Despite the capitalist morality of personal wealth and morality of supporting the poor's life and dignity remains strong. In summary, the civil sphere aims to reform institutions and strengthen to the foundation to build a better society, while in mass sphere they want fairness and generosity for the needy. However, the moralities of the two spheres do have several things in common. First, they share feelings of dissatisfaction and antipathy toward the elite. Cor- Corruption, corrupt politicians, often referred as trapo in both and mass spheres, both civic and mass spheres, are often criticized for their malevolent presence and regressive nature, hindering the economic development and modernization of the Philippines. Second, religion is also a moral reference point that transcends the boundary between the dual public spheres. Catholicism, a religion of the Philippines, transcends the boundary of public spheres, demonstrating deep-seated empathy for the suffering of Christ. This empathy translates into sympathy for Filipinos suffering at the hands of excessive power, forming a sense of community that opposes the ruling authorities and demand justice for their rights and dignity. That will be all.
Hello, good morning, everyone. So I'll just repeat the definition of contact zone again. Contact zone is the area of overlap between the civic and mass sphere where they encounter one another, giving rise to diverse power relations. This is the common arena in which members of both classes, the middle class and the impoverished class, can cross the dividing line or do divisions which cause limited opportunities for interaction because they don't necessarily share the same living space or because of the language, education, and livelihood gaps. And this is where they encounter people and discourses from the other side, where deliberation or cooperation between people of different backgrounds can happen. This is where they can negotiate or struggle. Because the function of contact zones is to provide a mutual understanding to address the gaps and misrepresentations between the social classes. The resulting politics will be the diverse power relations, which will give way to the transformation of antagonism to agonism. Um, they can acknowledge or they will be able to acknowledge the existence or recognize the intersecting identities, space, and factors that shape their experiences of power and privilege. In contact zones, they can recognize and accept each other's legitimacy of greater levels of contestation as a part of democratic thought and politics. This fluidity of interactions will give both the classes or the spheres to exchange the antagonistic views and mediate this antagonism to address the gaps between the social classes. So, what Kusaka text shows is Kusaka critiques how moral politics works in the Philippines and the need of it to be addressed because it furthers the instability of Philippine democracy. Kasi nga, it prevents Filipinos from forming or attaining social improvements. It generates disunity between the two classes because of the class-based notion of right and wrong and how it draws a demarcation line between groups as either we good, they evil. Their moral politics in the Philippines show how the sectors of society within the civic and mass sphere direct their frustrations not only at democracy but at the opposite class as well. Kasi there is exclusivism in their own social sphere, and the disparities and gaps are deepened even more by the moral politics because of the moral divisions. It reveals the class-based conflict because of their respective moral narratives. Kasi each group considers the other as a threat to democracy, and this makes it difficult to overcome the structural causes of inequality. This is still very much applicable in the Marcos Jr. era Philippines because despite the numerous attempts of civic organizations and the facts these activists and NGOs laid for the masses to what they call to educate them, Marcos Jr. still won the elections and the Marcoses were again catapulted into the Malacanang. So this is a big wake-up call that the Filipino masses are not of the same mind and heart as the middle class, consisting of the civic organizations, because the events after Marcos Jr. won also show that there are still gaps of ideologies and aspirations. Like what Miss Alisa said, they both share feelings of dissatisfaction and antipathy towards the elite. For the middle class, they do these campaigns and initiatives because of their desire for a modern political reform. And that's why they view themselves as moral citizens because they do these civic actions. That is how they express their opposition to elite-dominated democracy. But for the masses, they show opposition by voting for populists that espouse benevolence. Not only does that emphasize the general dissatisfaction of the masses with the post-people power and post-Marcos liberal democratic order, but also the growing appeal of benevolent authoritarianism, where these illiberal strongmen are seen as solutions to Philippines' long-standing problems because Filipinos are quite because the masses are quite frustrated with the crime, corruption, and inequality in the Philippines. Marcos' presidency can be seen not as a singular overturning of the last few decades in Philippine politics, but as a successor to Rodrigo Duterte's brand of illiberalism. And this is usually particularly concentrated among the poorest Filipinos or those who have experienced firsthand the failure of democracy to deliver on its promises of a better life. So an example would be the 20 peso rice, and ang dami nang kumagat during that time sa campaign ni Marcos Jr. For the impoverished class, appeals to good governance and liberal democracy were viewed as the usual hypocrisy. So this is why we really have to be sensitive to this moral divide to fully understand the reasons and the perspectives of both the middle class and the masses. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Karel. I'll spend probably 5 minutes to wrap up the discussion just before you hit the end record button, and I'll dismiss the class and I'll proceed to driving. Maybe it's not yet apparent because this work is new to you, and if you're listening, and maybe to the reporters as well, Wataru uses some complex terms like neoliberalism, morality, for instance, that can only be understood if you reread the reading again or you reread it carefully. But I think at this point, if you're still here listening, the first idea is that one, it is an elephant in the room to discuss social divisions that are based on morality. I assume a lot of you have taken ethics 1, right? Ethics is different from morality. Morality is just the options between right and wrong. Ethics are the social rules that are based on morality, which is right or wrong. But if you take a look at Philippine society and Philippine politics on the basis of morality or how people think what is right and what is wrong. It's an elephant in the room because people treat Philippine society as hierarchical and exclusivist, meaning lumaki tayo sa isang bansang Pilipinas kung saan may mayaman, may mahirap, may middle class. And we know how all of these different social classes interact with each other, and hence there is political relations. But because we're also part of the Philippine society, sometimes a lot of you would go to the church, a lot of you would think elitist, but also able to commiserate with the plight of the poor. We are not aware that we have a shared morality with other people. And this is what Wataru brings into the discussion of contemporary Philippine politics. Ang sinasabi niya, mas makahulugan for a poli-sci student if the poli-sci student analyzes contemporary Philippine politics also based on how people are grouped in terms of their moral choices in life. Do you support the killings in the anti-drug campaign? Do you vote for a dictatorial family who has a bad historical record and in the past? If you vote yes or no, then you could divide Philippine society based on these moral choices. But the story doesn't end there. It's not about, ay kasi DDS ka, ayaw kitang i-date. Or kasi Lenny Robredo supporter ka, parang ang galing-galing mo naman. It's not about that. It's about the exclusion and the marginalization that happens because we are unaware of the moral spheres where we belong to. Yung tipong because Marcos apologist siya, Duterte supporter siya, ang bansag natin sa kanila sa Facebook ay bobotante. Tapos tayo ay mga Lenny warriors. At ang tingin natin sa sarili natin ay matatalino. That's what is most important. The understanding that if you do not factor in morality as a social structure in the Philippines, you might be committing exclusions within Filipino society as well. And that leads to a dangerous path of analyzing what Philippine politics is all about. So, halimbawa, tumanda na kayo, tapos inimbitahan kayo to speak about what is Filipino politics in the year 2040. And then you just talk about elitism, the struggles of the masses, history from below. But you yourself remain to be unaware that you also may have been excluding people already based on your own narratives. Kasi middle class ka, UP ka, academic ka, ang tingin mo ganito dapat, ganyan. But in the way you speak, in the contents of your speech, you exclude the poor because the poor cannot understand you. That's one of the things that I don't want you guys to perpetuate or to continue or to practice in real life. So the conclusion to the first idea is because this is an elephant in the room at this and this is something that all of us are guilty of being unaware. You have to locate things that are excluding people based on politics. And what is the effect when you exclude people? There is a process of othering, and therefore you do not treat other Filipino people that are your enemies in your moral sphere as part of the Philippines. Yung parang nakakarinig kayo na, kasi binoto naman nila ni si Marcos, so dapat deserve nilang maghirap ngayon, tumataas ang presyo. Right? You've often heard of that narrative and that ideology. And you must not become that person because your task is to analyze both of them. Even if you know that you're coming from middle class or from elite or from a poor family, you must not exclude or exclusivist in your analysis. Second na lang before we end the report. I think the work of Wataru Kusaka is also not complete, but starts with important questions that we might think over through and through even after the end of the semester. Example, it should not escape you that Wataru is a foreigner and he is not a Filipino. So by all means, in terms of Filipinism and foreign scholarship, you must still treat with a grain of salt what Wataru is speaking in terms of moral politics in the Philippine society. 'Di ba? So foreign pa rin yung perspective niya. He might have committed errors in the analysis. It's very important for you to understand where the middle class is in the part of Alisa's report. So middle class, ang sabi ko, nawala, di ba? Owing to the fact that it was a foreign perspective. But tayo, dapat alam natin kung saan nakatayo yung middle class. That's one. But second, in terms of recommendations, wala namang sinabi si Wataru. Ano yung gagawin natin ngayon? Because there's a principle of othering. Ayaw natin sa mga bobotante, ayaw natin sa mga Marcos apologies kasi Lenny tayo eh. Up until now, we still articulate that one, right? I think the question now is, what do we do with the contact zone when people are now interacting with each other? And maybe as social science students, and maybe as you, my students, maybe the question is, how can we define the contact zone in order that exclusion will not happen in the Philippines? Should the middle class reach out to the poor? Should the elite reach out to the poor? Who is to reach out to who? And who is to teach people that there is a stratification based on morality and not just stratification based on economic standing. So Wataru actually starts with very good questions that are yet to be answered in Philippine politics. But as my student, ang gusto ko lang malaman nyo is mali na mag-exclude or mag-othering. Okay, so sa Facebook, wag niyong i-shut down yung taong bobotante. Engage them because they're still part, right? So that's one. Or do not engage them if they're fake information peddlers. Like hayaan nyo lang sila. Or report them or do things that could protect your own peace of mind and your own privacy. After all, if they're trolls, they're not real human beings. So it's pointless to fight against them. But second, maybe you have to think of, how do I make my contact zones more meaningful? Halimbawa, kung ang contact zone nyo ay ang nanay at tatay nyo, tapos iba ang pananaw ng nanay at tatay nyo, sa political preferences mo, excuse me, how do you engage them in the contact zone? Maybe that's more of a reflection that only each of us can answer. But you also have to be prepared if that is being asked as an essay question in your final examination. Like if you are part of the middle class, which is elitist, and if there are people that are from the poor, and then the question is about, do we suspend classes in the Philippines because it's too hot? Where do you stand, right? And how do you engage people who would say UP should have all air conditioning facilities in the classroom, which is very elitist? Or we should all go online, but you are blind to the fact that not all students can go online because of money and concerns. So, eto yung mga mahihirap na question because it requires you to reflect first on your own personal values before you could have a strong answer that is rooted on your morality or in your ethics. So walang mali, walang tama doon, but I think it's a measure of understanding from Wataru again. I'll just end by this. Do not exclude others just because you do not share the same moral framework with them. And second is always the lingering question of, how do you engage people or how do you contact people in the contact zone? If it's exclusionary, ayaw ko ng mga Dutertards, then you're just perpetrating social divisions based on morality. But if you are able to think of other ways, like you engage them in debate, you befriend them, you write articles to understand better Philippine society, then these maybe are starting points of the study of contemporary Philippine politics. But again, because we're talking about module number 4, contemporary Philippine politics, as your teacher, ang gusto ko lang sabihin is, Eto tayo. That's how we operate now. There are no solutions, only descriptive problems that keeps you thinking of more problems and more problems as you become social scientists yourselves immersed in Filipino politics. Do you guys follow? So I think that was a good report for group 2. And I'll just announce something about the quiz. Pero off record na, sige. You can stop the recording. For the